Good evening, all. I'm Aditi Lamba. Welcome to Vision of Asia Thursday night episode. This is our daily South Asian news segment, continuing to present to you our coronavirus pandemic special report featuring key individuals, officials, representatives, doctors, and many more on ITV Gold, giving their advice, tips, and measures. Much is happening across the nation as states face economic, health, and wellness ramifications of the outbreak. A drastic rise in domestic violence to education system. Response to the crisis, we have tonight an episode with several important individuals who are truly helping and working towards providing more help and resources. If you or your association is helping in COVID-19 relief efforts, email us on events@itvgold.com. Today, the world count of COVID-19 cases is nearing 3.8 million with more than 265,000 deaths. In the United States, it is more than 1.2 million cases and 73,000 deaths. Quite sobering numbers right here. New York City, where we are coming from, remains the epicenter with the highest number of cases. On the economy, another 3.2 million Americans filed for first-time unemployment benefits. In New York City today, Mayor Bill de Blasio announced that 140,000 New Yorkers will undergo antibody testing beginning next week. These antibody tests are very important in determining who has built immunity to COVID-19. Lots tonight on this and updates from many platforms available for community to engage, empower, and enable. Here are the headlines. Sakhi on domestic violence drastic rise during coronavirus pandemic, featuring Executive Director Kavita Mehra. NYU Assistant Dean Sonal Pande on COVID-19 response and resources, School of Professional Studies, New York University. The Culture Tree and Indian Consulate hosts virtual event featuring Grammy-nominated singer Falu, Shah, New York City. It's time for a short break on Vision of Asia. Voice of the Community will be back shortly. Welcome back. I'm Aditi Lamba and this is Vision of Asia, special report on coronavirus impact, measures, and updates. Beginning the episode here on a positive note, let's take a look at the Culture Tree, which promotes cultural literacy about South Asia through language, culture, and educational programs. Recently, in collaboration with the Indian Consulate of New York, the Culture Tree hosted a virtual event for its student body featuring Grammy-nominated singer and songwriter Falu. The popular singer presented different types of music instruments, answered questions from the students, and also taught basics of classical Indian music at the event. Falu's Grammy-nominated project called Falu's Bazaar takes families on a musical journey through South Asia, inspiring children all across. Here is some highlights from the virtual event, a sing-along with Falu and the children.
So now I'm going to teach you how to sing it, okay? So, 4 at a time. Sa re ga ma. Your turn.
Sa re ga ma.
Pa dha ni sa. Your turn.
Pa dha ni sa.
Now we're going to do all 8 notes in one time. So we go sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa. Your turn.
Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa.
Good job. Now when we come back, we will do 4 at a time. This is the last red line. Sa ni dha pa. Now the next 4 words. Ma ga re sa. Now we'll combine it. So we go sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Yeah, but what does that mean? Awesome, good job. Now we're going to sing the whole solfege, the red lines, both together, 2 of them. So we will go ascending, which is the first line, and then we will follow it by singing the descending, which is the second red line. Got it? Okay, so let me sing it one time, and then I would love to hear you guys sing it the second time. Okay, so my turn first. You listen, okay? Listening ears. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa. Sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Your turn. Yes, beautiful job. Very good. I'm actually clapping for you guys. Kya baat, kya baat. This is a very fascinating instrument. It's played by threads. These little pieces of threads. That's how it plays. And it has two faces of skin. This is the skin and this is the skin. And the way you play it is like this. So you twist and turn. And growing up in India, when we wanted to see the monkeys dancing, they were the dancers who came with monkeys, and we used to spin this. They used to spin this, make the sound, so all the kids would come down from their apartments, and the monkey would dance, and the monkey would dance on this beat, this drum. Then we have, this is also very fascinating. This is a kartal. It's an instrument called kartal. So Mirabai or Tukaram or Surdas, all these saints used to sing bhajans and the songs, the religious songs, and they used to play this with one hand and an instrument called iktara on one hand. Or, so the way, if you play it with one hand, it sounds like this. And look at it, it has a snake. It's made by a snake's mouth. Look at the thing. This is the eye. This is the tongue, and this is its nose right here. And it's fascinating for a kid. And you can play it like this, or with one hand, or sometimes I put my middle finger and I go that. I make that sound. And then some of the other things are the wooden shakers. Different kinds of shakers that we use. And this is a very popular instrument in our Bollywood music, which is, the music that's made in Bombay for entertainment purposes in Bollywood movies. And we go like this. R.D. Burman is a composer who uses this a lot, and many others use. You played with a comb. Have you ever made an instrument that you can play with a comb? That's cool, right? That's it.
Students around the globe have had to adjust almost overnight to a radically different learning environment due to the coronavirus pandemic. Universities and institutions across the nation have gone entirely virtual due to the spread of this virus, with much focus now on remote learning access and resources. The New York University is committed to supporting academic progress and success during this pandemic, and the university is also focused on mental wellness of its students. We spoke to Assistant Dean at the NYU School of Professional Studies, Sonal Pande, bringing in much perspective on the education system during COVID-19 crisis and NYU's response to it. Here is the story.
What have been some of the financial impacts on students, and are there resources available to financially help them throughout this period? I'm talking about people that are on grants, students that are waiting on certain support and resources. What has happened to all of that?
Again, a very challenging situation for us. So I'll give you some examples. So over the last few weeks, when we were trying to get our students back home safely, not everybody has the resources, for example, to book a flight at short notice. And so the university really spent close to about $3 million out of its own resources to get students back home. And the next course was that a lot of students needed immediate financial assistance. They needed assistance finding housing or getting the technology support. There were all kinds of ways that students were impacted in. So the university has so far, since we have shut down and gone to remote instruction, given out just over $4 million in emergency aid funding to students. And we will continue to do so to ensure that our students and, especially our faculty and staff as well, not to exclude them, are best supported. In addition, because students moved off campus and we're no longer utilizing on-campus housing, we're no longer utilizing like the dining facilities, etc. So the university has refunded students, and that came up to about $60 million.
Well, students are truly at the heart of this crisis of all age groups, and the education system is kind of in crisis in parts of the nation as well. I wanted to know how the students of NYU particularly are reacting to the remote learning, virtual settings, and there is anxiety and fear in the community. So how is the university tackling that with the students? Because I'm sure that they must be, as shaken as all of us are.
Absolutely. And I think what we don't realize is that a lot of students have gone back home, right? And also additionally dealing with a lot of situations at home amongst their communities.
Right.
Like I said earlier, this is not an experience that any student ever signed up for. And this is not an experience that any of us anticipated, right? So we completely understand that students are feeling a great sense of uncertainty. You know, the online remote instruction system is a very personal experience. It's not the same for every student. So student support needs tend to vary across the spectrum. So we are really relying on our faculty. We're really relying on student services, staff that support students outside of the classroom, their advisors, to really stay looped into what is happening and have that conversation, keep the door open so that students feel that if they're struggling, then there is somebody they can talk to help them out, right? A lot of faculty I know are going out of their way to provide that extra support even outside of what is required of them. Advisors are working overtime to try and curtail uncertainty. My services and career services on campus are doing extra programming, providing extra avenues for students to feel supported in terms of looking for a job or an internship. Everything looks so different. And the problem is everything is so uncertain. We really don't know what things will look like 3-4 weeks from now. And it's not just New York City, what things will look like for our students across the globe. And so the challenges are so unique, but we all recognize the fact that the health and wellness, mental wellness of our students and the fact that they need to stay on track in terms of learning outcomes is the top priority. And then everything that we build and we design and we develop kind of pans out from that.
There's also a huge body of South Asian graduate students at NYU as well. What is happening to these programs, and what is happening to these students that are on student visas or are, in these bigger programs that could be halted right now?
So that's a very good question. There's a huge, as you mentioned, there's a huge body of graduate students. I mean, my school, the School of Professional Studies, we are primarily a graduate school. So at any given point in time, we have about 4,000 students on our rolls. The huge majority of them are graduate students. We're also the second most international school on campus. So I can talk from a very personal experience to say that, our student body has been greatly affected. The Office of Global Services, which essentially guides students and handholds them through their visas and the student statuses, is very much on board. They're staying in constant communication with our students. Again, from the university's perspective, things are still very fluid, right? Like there are always new directives coming out, things are changing. So the university makes sure that we stay really on track, on top of the changes happening, and are communicating, especially with our international population of students.
Right.
Part of them who are still here in the country haven't left. Some of them who've gone back. How is everybody affected and what to anticipate? We do the best we can. Do we have all the answers? No, but we try to keep them as up to date as possible. In terms of supporting this international population, especially the South Asian community,
right,
it's a challenge, right? Because a lot of the community building that happens, there's a very vibrant South Asian community on campus in New York.
Right.
They can't meet in person. They can't connect in person. So what we have done 2 weeks ago is we've launched a project which is called the Violet Network. It's an online global platform, which is available currently to all alumni and the class of 2020. And in the coming few weeks, we will be opening it up to the student body at the university. And the idea is that students can not only just network and connect and mentor with alumni and industry professionals on the platform, but they can also find their own communities. So we have a lot of groups on that particular platform that are country-specific, region-specific, even city-specific. So I know that there are groups, for example, on the platform for students who belong to India or students who belong to Bangladesh. And so they can really find their community there and connect and kind of support each other through conversations and other groups.
It's time for the short break on Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community. Come back to us right after. Welcome again. This is Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community, and I am Aditi Lamba. Lockdowns across the nation and the nature of this pandemic is resulting in a drastic rise in domestic violence and abuse, where the ability to exert physical and psychological control is magnified for those at risk. They're no longer able to escape this crisis. Addressing this increase in domestic violence and access for survivors struggling during COVID-19, Sakhi for South Asian women continues to lead its movement for gender justice and survivors of violence. Sakhi has now hired a team to produce and facilitate remote advocacy and legal counseling and is offering many sessions. Executive Director Kavita Mehra spoke with us on domestic violence rise during COVID-19 and all the resources that are available through Sakhi. Here is the story.
I wanted to highlight a quote I read in one of the newspapers today, which basically was talking about the increase in domestic violence, where they're saying that Americans are finding themselves trapped and victims of escalated violence during this pandemic. I wanted to start off this interview discussing what that really means and what is exactly happening in terms of this escalated violence since the pandemic has hit the nation.
So we're seeing those trends as well. We know that what we've experienced here at Sakhi for South Asian Women is a drop in calls from our helpline, which indicates to us that survivors are not safe and they don't have a safe space to make calls. From the survivors that we've been able to contact with, what we're seeing are pretty significant trends that also indicate that survivors are not safe at this moment. A trend that we're seeing is that orders of protections are being violated. More and more men are answering the phone when we're calling survivors' cell phones. We're also seeing a rise in sexual violence happening in the community. More survivors are asking for access to contraception because they're experiencing severe forms of sexual violence. We're seeing violence against children happening now, and more youth survivors are coming out in full force. And also the economic impact of the pandemic has been deeply impacting the community. And so we've been trying to respond accordingly, where survivors are losing their jobs. So there's instability in housing, in economic security, as well as in food.
How has this all happened so fast and, escalated to this level? Do you know the reasons behind why, more men are answering the calls, you're not getting enough calls, the connection with the survivor is getting a little scarce for certain organizations? Your comments on that?
Yeah, so I mean, what we know is that everyone has experienced a significant amount of instability. The community that we serve live in the epicenter of the epicenter. So if we know that New York City is the epicenter of the pandemic, Woodside, Corona, Jamaica, Kensington, Brooklyn, Jackson Heights, parts of the Bronx are really the epicenter of the epicenter, and that's the community that we serve. This is also a population that lives with less economic stability for the most part. And so many hourly waged workers, many individuals who are making sure or have one income in their household and or might have more of a working class background. And so the impact of the pandemic has left significant ramifications on the community, which has further destabilized their capacity to be able to absorb this moment.
How are these survivors reacting right now when they're interacting with you over the phone or, virtually? What are they concerned the most about?
Yeah, I mean, survivors are facing a very difficult decision. Many survivors that we've been speaking with, some of those who have access to be able to leave, especially particularly abusive situations, are choosing not to leave because they don't want to expose themselves to the pandemic. This is also a population that has limited access to healthcare. And so the resources that are available are incredibly limited. We have survivors right now who are testing positive and don't have are undocumented. And we would consider those survivors to be the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. And so really the systems that are really for supporting the community are not fully being able to effectively support the community at this time. And so what we're seeing that is really just playing out in real life.
We've also heard that some of these survivors are being threatened, to be exposed outside, to be thrown outside their houses in this pandemic. Is that something that the South Asian diaspora or the women that Sakhi is helping, have you seen that trend as well?
What we've seen as a trend is that survivors are, again, making that choice of having to choose between staying with their perpetrator or being exposed to the pandemic, and they're choosing to stay with their perpetrator because they're essentially swapping out one public health issue for another, and really are concerned about the impact of the pandemic and COVID. We are seeing survivors who are living in shelter right now, and of those survivors that we work with, many of them have little access to food, and so we are trying to step in the way that we can. We haven't seen directly where survivors are, being forced to leave their home in the midst of the pandemic, but what we are seeing are forms of power and control, that the pandemic is being used as a form of power and control. More specifically, again, orders of protection are being violated. Child custody agreements are being violated. We are seeing, the economic instability as a result of the pandemic, then further exacerbating forms of control between partners, and so inflicting greater forms of economic abuse. We have one survivor in particular that we work with. Her perpetrator has decided to take away her cell phone because he has lost his job. And so to basically essentially only have one cell phone to streamline household expenses, he's decided that the family will only use their cell phone. He has essentially cut her off from the rest of the world. And so what we are seeing are instances of that where, the economic instability coupled with the pandemic are being used to further exert forms of control.
So this definitely requires somebody like Sakhi, as an organization to truly step up and help these women. And this is happening while we're all suffering through this pandemic and we're all locked into our houses. I kind of want to go into the programs that Sakhi is currently providing for these survivors. And, how have you sort of, gotten used to this, change, and knowing that you need to help all these women, but, only have virtual access? I would like to know what's happening in Sakhi in that regards.
Yeah, so Sakhi is doing what it does best, which is really responding to crisis. We've been around for 31 years serving the community, and we work with the community in responding directly to crisis. So we are flexing that muscle. We know exactly how to respond in this situation in terms of being able to support survivors through the most difficult, one of the most challenging and traumatic experiences of their time. And I have to say, I'm incredibly proud of our team in their capacity to be agile and really pivot to support the community in this way. So all of our programming has moved virtual. That includes our mental health counseling, our case management, our legal clinics, our economic empowerment program, our job coaching, our job readiness, all of those critical core services that work directly with survivors in the community continues to function. And I would say our team has been doing a remarkable job in being able to address that. Additionally, our transitional housing program has continued without a hitch. And so we're continuing that program, underwriting housing for 11 clients for 2 years in their own homes without a drop of a bat.
And this wraps up our show for the night. Remember to send us your suggestions and get your voices and organizations on our show. Email us on events@itvgold.com or follow us on Facebook @itvgold. You can also now subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch many of our popular shows for free. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is Vision of Asia, and I am Aditi Lamba. Take care and be well.